Please welcome Keynote Speaker and Chief Technology Officer of Palantir Technologies, Shyam Sankar.
All right, it's great to be here with you guys, back in Detroit, with the folks who are going to build our future. But before we talk about our future, I wanted to start with our past. Let's go back in history. Wild Bill Donovan, one of the most decorated U.S. service members, the founder of the OSS, the precursor to the CIA. In 1941, FDR sent him to Europe to do a tour of the battlefield to understand the Allies' prospects for victory. And what he observed was that the British were fighting a guerrilla campaign against the big professionalized German army. And it reminds us, we were in the early stages of rearmament in the US here. And it reminds us that we didn't just flip a switch and turn our car factories into weapons factories. Actually, Bill Knudsen got started in 1940. It was Lend-Lease that provided the impetus for us to modernize and to convert. It took 18 months to get there. But what Wild Bill came back with and reported to FDR is that the US needed a similar approach. We needed to have a guerrilla approach to how we were going to fight this campaign, because the Germans, they're big league professionals. And the US, we were at the time a Bush League club. As I learned last night, we were only the 17th largest army in the world at the point. So we needed to play a Bush League game where we stole the ball, killed the umpire, and ran out the clock until the American industrial base was ready to pour it on. And today we also find ourselves in the opening innings of a Bush League game against communist China. They look at us and they scoff, much in the same way that the Redcoats scoffed at the American rebels. And at first glance, it's not hard to see why. We're in this David versus Goliath matchup. The cupboard is bare, the bins are barren. We're all aware of the industrial power mismatch here, both across commercial and defense. On rare earths, China holds our industry hostage, refining 90% of rare earths out there. When you look at mining, it's even more dire. They're able to do this because we have opened 3 mines of any type in the US since 2002. It takes us 30 years to get a mine online. It takes China 3 years. When we look at shipbuilding, China obviously they have 250 times the shipbuilding capacity we do, but they built more ships last year than we have built cumulatively since the end of World War II. They made 2,000 ships last year, we made 5. Look at pharmaceuticals. Half of all generics are made in China. There are 100 generic drugs that are exclusively made in China. Our country will be brought to our knees if we have to choose between deterring aggression and conflict or saving your 5-year-old from dying from an ear infection. Even with cars, China has now become the largest exporter of cars. We, meanwhile, make less cars than we made at the turn of the century. And in energy, China surpassed our energy production a decade ago, and their rate of growth is staggering while we have continued to stagnate. And finally, with weapons, the US military admitted that we went through SM-3s at an alarming rate in the 12-day conflict with Iran. And Israel had to ration interceptors as ballistic missiles were pummeling down on Tel Aviv. Think about the counterfactual. If that 12-day war was a 12-week war, where would our magazine depth have ended? We need to be able, think about the counterfactual. If we could regenerate our weapons in weeks and not years, or perhaps more terrifyingly, if the adversary could. The conclusion from this is that we're actually the underdog. We mistakenly thought the stockpile was the deterrent when it's actually the ability to produce the stockpile. That production is the weapon, and we chose to unilaterally disarm. We don't need weapons that sit on shelves for 30 years. We need things more like Starlink that burn up on reentry in 5 years, where you're competing and designing the entire industrial base designed for manufacturability at scale and at speed. And then we're competing on our rate of innovation on these very things. Now, I take a lot of comfort from the idea that we're the underdog, because all periods of American greatness started when we realized that. We were the underdog in the Revolutionary War. We were the underdog going into World War II. And once again, we are. And Goliath, on the other hand, is very self-assured and very arrogant and doesn't see David coming. Our biggest risk is not homicide, it's suicide. It's our unwillingness to get off our ass and actually compete. Our greatest threat isn't China, it's ourselves. We were on the road to this suicide with fatalism and complacency. But this gathering shows that we can shake off that cynicism. And you can't do great things without heretical thinking and definite optimism. And there is a lot of good reasons to have optimism right now. A new day is dawning. We see it with the defense reformation that's sweeping Washington, the memos from Secretary Hegseth, the EOs from President Trump, the Army Transformation Initiative, which is highly politically inconvenient, saying true things that we need to change so that we can fight and win and deter that are hard to do. We see it with the talent mobilization that's happening inside and outside of our armed forces. We see it with the first breakfast, the antidote to the 1993 Last Supper, hundreds of founders and hundreds of billions of dollars of capital backing them are now building in the national interest. The bureaucrats and the naysayers are in retreat. We've gotten more done in the last 6 months in DC than in the last 6 years. The rate of change is accelerating. We see serious momentum on reshoring pharma production. My father was a pharmacist. This is something I pay a lot of attention to. Changes unseen in the last 50 years. We see the investment in MP materials and bringing rare earth production and refining back to the US here. We have a goal of quadrupling nuclear power output by 2050. I would argue that's not nearly ambitious enough. Maybe we should be going for 100x, but that's a start. But we have to hurry because there's so much more to do than just those things there. And we have 40 years of bad policy to unwind in less than 40 months. But the greatest cause for optimism is that the builders are back. The live players are sitting here in this room. And we're bringing back the American industrial base. And that's happening across the country, coast to coast. Last year at this conference, we launched our Warp Speed offering, the modern American manufacturing operating system. I think it's a testament to how serious the country is about reindustrializing that is the fastest growing part of our business. Now, if you want to win, you have to play to your strengths, not to your adversary's strengths. And I think America's asymmetric advantages are American innovation and the American worker. And these are the keys to rebuilding our industry. These are the keys to playing the Bush League game. And that starts because tech is American, so much so we take it for granted. More than 90% of all tech market cap is American. American tech is kind of repetitive. And I see this every day on how software is enabling America to reimagine production. Bits can't replace atoms, but you can bend atoms better with bits. That is our asymmetric advantage here. And it's incredibly important to reindustrialize because innovation itself is a consequence of productivity. We have listened to this siren song of outsourcing low-end stuff, we'll do the high-end stuff. That's not actually possible. It's a complete fiction. So as I think about it, if you don't make things, you can't innovate on those things that you're making. And as a consequence, reindustrialization is really an issue of national sovereignty. Our biggest Bush League trick here, though, is AI. The Chinese are the best at long-range planning. They have systematically invested in things to undermine us over the last 40 years, perhaps longer. The one thing they could not plan for was the AI revolution. That is what's causing the current moment of consternation and crisis, and that's why we're singularly focused on that piece of competition. It would be a huge mistake, though, to think that the AI competition is about AI. We need to wield that to affect all the other things where they have systematically undermined us. And the way to do that is to use AI to give American workers superpowers. The normative value of AI in the enterprise absolutely is enterprise autonomy. And that means we need to be building agents, not co-pilots. We need to have the aspiration to make the American worker 50 times more productive, not 50% more productive. And the limiting factor with autonomy is always edge cases. That's what we've been doing for 20 years, trying to build a self-driving car. We still have humans that handle the edge cases at the tail end of the Waymo service or the Tesla fleet. The humans really matter. And if you think about automation in the wrong way, it can actually become self-limiting. It can lock you into the past. If you think about it the right way, it becomes the tool to help you invent the future. And I think as a consequence, we need to be planning for mixed mammal AI teams. It's really going to be Luke Skywalker and R2-D2. AI doesn't have to obsolete human hands and minds. It can actually make them more valuable. And this is where I think America's software industrial complex has most failed us. It has been focused for far too long on things that are easy to sell, not on things that are inherently valuable. It's the opioid, not the medicine. It's all beta, things that make us more similar to each other, not more different. We need technologies that lever up the unique abilities of the individual, the unique capabilities of this company as opposed to that company. But I see that happening every day. I see how AI is giving American workers superpowers. One of the examples I love the most is with Panasonic Energy at Sparks, Nevada. They're co-located with the Gigafactory. They produce every battery that goes into the Tesla there. The workers in that fact, this is high-end, exquisite Japanese technology. The workers, their prior job was casino. How do you take a casino worker and make them capable of being a highly skilled technician on exquisite Japanese technology to manufacture batteries here in America? You give them an AI co-pilot that makes them effective in months, not years. That's really powerful. That's reindustrialization happening. I see it in food companies in the Midwest where you can give a quality technician on the factory floor the ability to potentially recall contaminated batches instantaneously rather than the weeks of work of doing this. I see this with Ursa Major, building more rocket motors, in particular, getting 100x improvement in their quality inspection process. That's more motors at a lower cost. That is substantial deterrence. I see it in construction, which is the bottleneck to everything we're talking about here, where electrical engineers, construction managers are able to leverage agents to go through tens of thousands of pages of documents to look for inconsistencies, to look for efficiencies, to build things faster at a lower cost so we can go faster as a nation. In each case, AI is levering up the human. It is making human taste more valuable, not less valuable. And I think this is the leading light for how we should be thinking about this. And the first derivative is very steep. I think we're in the early innings. We've done 1% or less of what is possible here. So I don't believe in the job doomerism. That's not my lived experience on the factory floors of Detroit or even the fire cells of Djibouti. I see something completely different happening. I'm happy for China to keep believing that misinformation here. I think that AI is going to allow the American worker to have these superpowers, to have more satisfying jobs with more purview. I do think the nature of work will change. Everyone's role is going to feel more like a startup. You won't be in this deeply structured silo of a narrow job function. You're going to have more ability to affect and change the enterprise inherently because you're going to be Luke Skywalker with an army of R2-D2s that help you get these things done. And the stakes could not be higher here because China is preparing for a future with robots and no humans, no workers. But in America, we can build a future where tech gives our workers superpowers. And that's not just a strategic choice, it's a civilizational one. Are we building the operating system for autocracy or the operating system for freedom and prosperity? And this is a competition. If we roll up our sleeves and get after it, we're going to win. In this competition, talent is the bottleneck, and luckily for us, brilliance springs up from the American soil. We saw that from Wright brothers to rockets. American audacity is ascendant. The most brilliant minds come from unexpected places with completely unexpected resumes. Whether that's what we saw with World War II mobilization, or Chuck Yeager from West Virginia, or Neil Armstrong from Ohio, Gene Kranz in the triumph of the squares in the Apollo program, Bob Noyce, the Iowan founder of Silicon Valley. The degree to which we underestimate all of tech is actually rooted deeply in Midwestern culture. Heroes and heretics, there is nothing more American than that. And because of that, we launched the American Tech Fellowship. Because tech, it's not just about the tech, it is about the worker. And we see unprecedented demand in the companies that we work with in the industrial base, in the American industrial base, manufacturers, not just defense, for these sorts of skills. People who know how to bend metal, but can also bend bits better. You gotta combine these skills. And we're convinced, I see it. I see the innovative blue collar worker who is an autodidact, teaches themselves things, they're curious, they're clever, they're unafraid, they have ambition, they figure these things out. They are actually charting the course of the future of their companies, and in so doing, the future of our country. The first cohort of our American Tech Fellows, they're actually here today. If they would like to stand for me here so I can embarrass them. Yeah. So we launched the fellowship. Within 48 hours, we had 500 applications. We chose 38. 10 of them are here today. They're doing a hackathon. I'd encourage you to come upstairs to the 3rd floor to check out what they've been building here. It's pretty impressive stuff. But they all have unconventional backgrounds. You guys can sit. I don't have to embarrass you longer. Yeah, thank you. Highly unconventional backgrounds here. We have combat medics, naval aviators, we have artists, MBA defectors, which I'm most proud of. And I think some of them are just a few years removed from colleges. Some of them have 20 years of experience or taking on entirely new careers and reinventing themselves. But these are the workers who are going to reunite the houses of atoms and bits and build our future. So what does success look like? Because I don't think AI is about robot versus human. It's certainly not about the end of work. It's not about frivolous bullshit consumer applications. It's not about enriching the elites. It's about revitalizing the American spirit. It's about harmonizing man and machine so they can work together to build a stronger country. We'll know it's working when the heretical heroes are empowered and unleashed. Rusted, overlooked cities are springing back to life. The Americans are creating and sharing in the prosperity of this new golden age. When the spirit of optimism about America, about tech, about our future has returned, and perhaps most importantly to me, the belief in the power of the individual. Now, they say that China, by 2030, will have 45% of all global manufacturing output, and America will fall to 11%. I say, fuck that. We're going to have 45%. Yeah. We are very much in the early innings of a Bush League game here. We're the underdog. And the American worker and American innovation, those are our guerrilla weapons. And we're ready to fight for America, all of us, collectively. And I'm excited because the future is going to be built in America by you. Thank you, guys.